Hello and welcome to the Advntrr Podcast, where we discuss the tips, tricks, and strategies to living a location-independent lifestyle. Hello there, fellow adventurer. This is Brad. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited about this episode, and I think you'll love it. We dive into 5 really cool movies that have definitely impacted both of our lives, and we think they have really big or really deep messages that help people, with the nomadic inclination to have some sort of big realization that can set your life on a whole new, sort of more fulfilling and happier path. So these are 5 great movies that kind of mess with your mind, that open it to new paradigms, and ultimately can help you get to a more fulfilling life and can help inspire you to go out and do the things that you want to do, live life on your terms, and fulfill your nomadic fantasies. So enjoy this list of 5 movies. It's by no means exhaustive of other great movies. And if you happen to have any suggestions for some of your favorite movies, send them in to adventurerlifestyle@gmail.com or go to our website at www.advntrr.com and put a comment on the blog or get in touch with us there. We'd love to hear your ideas. Looking forward to this episode, so enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Brad, and I'm here with Advntrr.
Again. Hello.
Again, yes. We just did an introduction, and then we realized that we were not recording.
Yes.
Turns out recording is a fairly essential part of podcasting.
You're just giving him way too much free information, Brad.
Yeah, I'm giving away all the secret tips, tricks, and techniques.
Yeah, all these gold nuggets. Future podcasters out there.
Back in my day, podcasting was done without recording. We called it talking to each other.
Yeah, no, it's 2016, man. Who talks?
Oh, man. It is 2016. That's crazy.
Yeah. Do you feel old now?
Yeah, well, I think 30 is the first year where you can legitimately start to think that you're old. No. Yeah. I've noticed too, though, that people, it's always relative, right? It's always when you turn 18, you feel like you're old compared to the other kids in high school. When you turn when you're 21, 22, you feel like you're old compared to the freshmen in college. When you're 25, you feel like you're old compared to the 21-year-olds you see entering the drinking scene. And when you're 30, you start to just feel old.
Yeah, I remember being in the last year of university and seeing the new batch of first-year students come in. Mm-hmm. Damn, and they looked so... I was like, did I look this skinny and scrawny as well when I walked in, like a child?
Right.
But yes, I did, and I actually still did at that moment as well. But
yeah,
it's weird.
It's weird too, because to people who have more experience in life, in their 50s, 60s, whatever, they look back on us and we're still children. 30. Oh, that's you still barely know who you are.
Yeah, and we're the ones posting the questions online, I'm 28 and I want to change careers, but I fear it's too late. And then there's this 60-year-old guy who stayed in the factory, mm-hmm. that he didn't like. And he's like, for God's sakes, you're super young. Go do it.
Yeah, you still have tons of time.
And actually, I don't remember where I read this, but apparently there's a correlation between when you reach adulthood and how advanced your society is. If you live in some kind of an African tribe or something, when you're 12 or 13, you're getting married and you're sort of taking on the responsibilities of a man. Mm. Whereas in our society, especially nowadays, it's only at 35 when we get to the point where we're mature,
So when we finally move out of our parents' house, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Stop being YouTube entrepreneurs and
Hey, we're still waiting for that to happen. We're still waiting for...
Not pointing any fingers.
I still feel like if you would have started recording covers and putting them on YouTube 5 years ago, you'd be a guitar superstar by now.
Yeah, and still I'm too lazy to start doing it now.
Yeah.
I feel like my time's passed. I need to do a new thing. What's it? Vine?
Yeah, what's the new... It's the new technology.
Yeah, 5-second covers on
Yeah.
Snapchat or I don't know, whatever the kids are doing these days.
Yeah.
God damn, we sound old.
Yeah.
Do we have a topic for today?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We're tip number 2, secret underground tip for podcasting number 2, actually have a topic for your podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Being prepared in one way or another.
Yeah. Talking about a thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So our thing that we're going to be talking about today is 5 movies that will inspire you to travel, to choose the life that you want, to snap you out of the hypnosis and the doldrums of normal existence and life and kind of wake you up to choosing your own path.
Nice.
Heavy introduction there.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds dark.
Yeah, and it's going to get real dark, actually. So.
Yeah, but there's also some bright spots.
And there are some bright spots. So let's jump right in. The first movie that will change your brain, change your mind about life, maybe travel, maybe everything.
Drum roll.
Drum roll. Terrible drum roll. I don't know how to drum.
I'll just replace that with a sample or something.
There we go. All right, so what is it, Dieter?
It is one that probably a lot of people are already into, but it is Fight Club.
Fight Club. There's a reason that so many people are into this movie / book.
Oh, yeah. I think it resonates a lot with people like us. And
yeah.
People like us, probably the people who are listening.
Oh, we should say this is sort of a courtesy in the movie review world. We're going to talk about the movies with spoilers. We're just going to say whatever we got out of the movie. So if you haven't seen any of these movies, we'll mention the title of the movie, and then if you haven't seen it and you don't want us to spoil it, then just skip past it, I guess, because we're going to definitely spoil any of these movies if you haven't seen them already.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, can't do one without the other.
Right. So Fight Club.
Fight Club is basically about a guy who wants to test all of the assumptions for his modern life and just basically sets it all on fire. And there's a battle in that movie between him, like who he is, and then who he wants to be. So he befriends a guy who basically is everything that he wants to be. The guy who, as they say in the movie, fucks the way he wants to fuck, dresses the way he wants to dress, talks the way he wants to talk, and the whole struggle that comes with that. So it goes horribly out of control because they start to get a following and start a thing called Fight Club, which is where they basically just go with very little rules, just start to beat each other up just to feel alive again, get out of the drag of as they say in the movie as well, just building your IKEA nest and going to your boring day job and respecting all the rules. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is definitely a movie, like when I watch it personally, and I watch it regularly almost, is you just want to be a badass, you want to say fuck you to a lot of people in your life if you watch it. Mm-hmm. I don't know what your feelings were when you saw it.
It was kind of a lot to take in, a lot of thoughts that I hadn't really considered before. And I watched it again after thinking about those things more and being more of an adult, I guess. There's a lot of uncomfortable truths in that movie that are true as soon as you hear them, but you don't always want to hear them. And I think especially people like us and people like you, if you're listening to the podcast, we know the struggle between getting in line with the rest of society and following the rules and saying no to all that and doing our own thing. And it's not always easy to make either of those decisions. Sometimes you fit back in line with society's expectations because it brings certain advantages, it brings, safety, predictability, and whatever. Sometimes money, but you start to feel a little weird on the inside, and that's not ideally what you want, but it might be a smart move in the moment. So Fight Club just really takes a very passionate stand on one side of that issue, that you're not your possessions, you're not your khakis. I forget the exact quote, but
yeah, when he's standing, that's something, because it's based on a Chuck Palahniuk book, and that's one of the big ideas in that book as well. Like you identify with all of these things, but it's all sort of a trap, Mm-hmm. You start to be like, who am I as a person? Like he says that, like what is it? What kind of dining room table defines me as a person? Or
yeah, and it's really easy to get seduced into that thinking. And it also exposes that the world is set up, the game is rigged against you to try constantly to get you to accept those beliefs as your own through things like advertising. And trust me, I'm an advertiser and marketing.
Yeah.
I'm a marketer as well. So I know that the marketer, the advertiser's job is to get you to step into that. And we all have it pre-programmed into our brain that we want to follow the herd. We are kind of like tribal creatures. We want deep down to get the benefits of, society, but it doesn't always lead to a fulfilled life. It can lead to a safe life. It can lead to a nice life, but it doesn't lead to that like top of the self-actualization, hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the top is self-actualization. Now, what does that mean? It's kind of a nebulous thing, but it's going to look different for every single person. But it's probably not just following along with the societal kind of grooves that have already been set for you. It's probably going to take some things that scare the shit out of you, that challenge you, and, facing fears and getting rid of things that you think should be important. The word should is a good indicator as to something that you're doing for someone else and not for you.
Yeah, and that is the whole thing, like that it's all about assumptions. Like if someone would tell you, as a child, I don't know, you're in your room and there's one door, or in your house, there's one door you're not supposed to go through because that's where your dad stashes all of his porn or something. So they tell you, oh, well, when you go behind that door, there's no going back. A monster's gonna set you on fire or something, So you have that assumption and you're never testing it. You're like, well, better be safe than sorry. I'm just gonna stay on this side of the door and behave because I don't want to risk that. But this movie is all about this guy going, okay, everybody tells me I need to have this steady job, listen to my boss, file my reports on time, don't smoke, have a respectable wardrobe and a nice apartment. And this guy actually tests those assumptions because we're all afraid of that. We're all afraid of, if I let go, especially nowadays with the phones, if I turn off my phone, I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss an opportunity. And this guy actually says, fuck all of it. He blows it all up and sees what happens, So,
and often this too mirrors life, because I think Joseph Campbell says you can't have a resurrection without a death. I've also heard the analogy of the butterfly, to become a butterfly, a caterpillar has to actually die first. You don't get to have like a nice, happy transition. To become a new person, you have to set fire to the things that you once held dear in a way.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult struggle. I don't think everybody steps up to that or aspires to that, but certainly if you're listening to this podcast, you're most likely one of these people like us that kind of constantly has to reevaluate and painfully say goodbye to things that were your measuring stick for success or happiness before. You necessarily need to set fire to things in your past to facilitate growth.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of just like trying to tweak things here and there but that's not the way to do it.
Burn your ships is a common analogy.
Yeah.
And it looks different for everybody. It's not always going to be like, okay, I give up everything and I move to another country or something. Like, it's not going to be like that for everyone. It might be a lot more subtle than that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people do. It matters what you do for yourself. If you know it's really scary to, sign up to take that first class of college, then that's your path. That's your growth. And usually fear is an indicator that that's the thing you need to step into, this thing that you need to work on. And something else that you said that is highlighted by this movie is that when you test these assumptions, what you find is that there's a lot more malleability to that than you think. There's a lot more, I guess, when you start to test the assumptions of reality, you realize that those rules that you were living by because you thought you had to don't always exist, or they don't always exist the way that you thought they would.
No, because they've been handed down basically. Like everybody's heard this from someone, from their parents, and their parents have, like, these ideas, these assumptions have evolved through time, and we're surrounded by them. And everybody is telling us like, don't open the door, But because it's dangerous, like in the past, like everybody knew that if you went behind the city walls, like there would be monsters and dragons and witches killing you. So this is about the guy that just walks through the door and goes and finds out. And especially like with the identification as well. Like it's all, there's a lot of Zen stuff in this movie, you know. It's like the whole speech that you were talking about with you're not your khakis, you're not your credit card, you're not your grande latte, or what does he call it? It's all about, you know, that we identify too much with those little things. Like as soon as you have the same coffee every day, you become that person, you know. It becomes like sort of a trap. You become that person that drinks that coffee every day. And you know, so people know you like that, like, oh, he always drinks his coffee black, and then one day you get a cappuccino and everybody's like, you've changed as a person. And this is a very small thing, but there's much grander ideas that we do the same thing with.
Yeah, and a lot of times growth involves testing those things and breaking them.
Yeah, it's seeing that your degrees and your bank account don't define you, who you are. So if you get rid of all of them, you see what's left, and that'll be you.
It kind of matches up with what we talked about on our episode about happiness too. You know, that's ultimately, I mean, you can look at it, we're sort of looking at it from the darker side, but just as relevant. But from the other side too, that your khakis and your bank account and your credit card, whatever, those don't lead to happiness either. So
no,
they don't necessarily lead to growth. They could in certain ways, but they don't always lead to growth. And on the other side, they don't lead to happiness either. So
no, and it's a lot about, you know, the whole investment. Like, well, I'm already a person that got an engineering degree. In my case, for example, you know, I'm Dieter and I got an engineering degree. So there's going to be a lot of resistance to throwing that out the window and doing something else, because I already identify with that past, with having learned that. So I think in that sense, it's going to help people a lot with realizing that they can let go and a lot less can go wrong than they think.
Yeah, and coming back to that testing of assumptions and just seeing if that rule that you think that you should be living by, when you test it, you get to see, is that rule true? Sometimes it is, you know.
Yeah.
Some of those rules are in place for a good reason, and every once in a while when you test them, you find out that you should probably follow that one. But a really good movie, again, for getting into the mindset of testing assumptions of reality is the next one we're going to talk about.
Oh, yes. The next one, number 2 on the list of 5, is The Matrix. Again, a classic.
Right.
Let's get the classics out of the way.
Yep.
So, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's about a guy, he lives a boring life, and he has these suspicions about the world around him, and he gets picked out of it. I mean, it's basically about that we live in a computer simulation and nothing is real. The year is already 2200 and robots have taken over the world, and we all are hooked up to a computer living these dream lives, you know. And that is a very cool idea because it, you know, like Descartes' thing where I think therefore I am. What Descartes meant by that was, if there's a demon in this world that could trick him into believing anything, the demon could convince him of almost anything being real, you know? Like, the entire world around him could be fake. The only thing that you could know is that you exist because you're conscious of something, you know? So yeah, so that's kind of what the Matrix is about as well. Like that actually everything that we experience is actually a simulation, and it's all a lie to keep us under control, keep us docile. And some people get out and then, you know, wage wars and rebel, and
Yeah. Don't bother with this part 2 and part 3, really.
Yeah, exactly. Don't. Yeah. The first one is the philosophical liberate yourself one.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting because everybody has that, you know, like me and my dad showed our little niece, our little cousin, well, my cousin, his niece, this for the first time last year. And then immediately the discussion just started again, you know, at the end, like, what if it actually is like that? What if we actually do live in the Matrix? Like, how would you know? You wouldn't, you know?
Yeah.
So it could be actually our situation. But if you look at it in a slightly more metaphorical sense, like maybe not literally we're connected to a computer, but everything we hold dear is basically still fictional, which is sort of, I'm probably saying this in a very casual way for people who haven't looked into these kind of ideas. But the idea, a very good book to read on this, which I love, is Sapiens, which you still haven't read, Brad.
Not yet.
Never listened to me.
I know. I will. I will.
The core idea is that you can't convince a chimpanzee to do anything for you by promising him that he'll get lots of bananas in heaven. But with humans, that's something unique that we do. We make fictional imaginary structures to live within, so we can cooperate on a very big scale. And that's why we're so powerful, because we believe in things that don't exist. So that's sort of what keeps our tribes together. So like you're an American. So you're going to feel like a connection with other Americans. If you're some nuclear scientist, you're going to be able to walk into a room with another nuclear scientist that you've never met and be able to cooperate with that person. So that's sort of what helps us organize ourselves by the millions and dominate this planet. So that's kind of the theory behind that. Actually, aside from all of the like pure impulses, like just what the world looks like and what it feels like, there's also a layer in our personal realities that is made of beliefs that aren't actually real. Companies don't actually exist. Money doesn't actually exist. We all just live by them and fear them, because that's what helped us survive. But it's all actually a very random thing. So it's kind of cool. Like the Matrix is a metaphor for that. And again, just like the first one, if you can at least loosen your grip, I think to actually completely lose this, you probably need to become a monk or something, or just remove yourself from society altogether.
I have a question for you. How would you say, like, what's one way that the Matrix changed your thinking about how you were going to live your life?
I used to believe that people around me knew what they were talking about. Like they had it correct. I need to listen to them. And it made me, at least it sparked the idea inside of me that most people actually don't know what the hell they're talking about. They think they know what you're supposed to do. They think they can tell you about truth and what is real, but actually everybody has the same doubts, and everybody's just sort of looking up as well to someone else who told them these things. And no one actually is that much smarter than you. I mean, it's worth listening to some people. There's wise old people who can tell you, like, I can see what you're doing, and I tried it as well, and this is why I failed. So you can take that into consideration. But like, people walk in line, and they will peer pressure you into walking in line as well. And movies like The Matrix help me see that there's a very large possibility that they're just being peer pressured into it as well.
Yeah. I think a really pivotal point in The Matrix too is the red pill versus blue pill thing. And conceptually, that's just an idea that can be very important for your journey, whoever you are. I guess my perception of that moment, there's a moment where, Neo has to choose. You can either go back to a life of complacent happiness, I guess. I mean, well, that's the thing. We'll talk about it in one of our other movies on this top 5. But is that really happiness? The humdrum life? It might have its high points here and there. Usually for most people, the high points include getting drunk on the weekends to blow off steam from working all week, all day, all week, and those raises that they get once a year. And again, nothing wrong with that. If that's your blissful existence, then rock it out. But if it's not, then here's an opportunity. And the Matrix is like, I think everybody can relate to that moment where Neo is faced with the hard truth. And well, at that point, he doesn't know that it's true. He only has an invitation. He has an invitation to see what is actually going on. Yeah.
Between the truth and comfort, basically.
The truth and comfort, exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't always, not everybody wants to know the truth. Some people are, and actually I've seen this, part of my last profession, I guess, was to be a social coach for people. So I would actually help people to improve their social life, their confidence, things like that. But it was basically a constant challenge in getting them to face and overcome their fears and to realize that whatever strategies they had for accomplishing this goal weren't sufficient. They weren't correct. There was a deeper truth going on than they would like to admit or acknowledge. And you can't get the truth by looking to things like the media or things like typical mainstream magazines, blogs, TV. They're like soothing mechanisms for society. The evening news is designed to hook you. And just, if you ever look Okay, well, so here's an opportunity right here. If you don't want to know any of this stuff, then go back to doing whatever you were doing. But if you do want to know the truth, if you want to take the whatever pill is the truth pill, is that the red pill or blue pill?
Red pill, yeah,
red pill
is a good one.
So Neo has to choose, like, okay, like as soon as I start talking about this stuff, do you want to know more? Or are you like, no, shut up. My life is fine the way it is. If you want to know more, then you take the red pill and you go down the rabbit hole, et cetera, et cetera. And all of your dearly held beliefs and truths start to unravel. And that's going to be really difficult. And it's difficult for everyone. So that's just part of the game. But once you do it, they say the bell can't be unrung, right? Or a rung bell can't be unrung or something like that. So once you do it, you can't go back to believing the same things that you did before. So that's the great truth. And for example, like I was going to say, the truth about the news is that it's got this little pattern to it where they shock you and scare you with the first headlines. They don't tell you exactly what the resolution of that thing is because it's something called an open loop. They open the loop in your mind and go like, a murderer was seen rampaging through the whatever neighborhood. And you go, oh no, that neighborhood's only 2 neighborhoods away from mine. And then they say, we'll give you more details at 4. So then you're like, oh no, I better pay attention at 4. So then you sit down and you want to get that open loop resolved. You want to get it closed, they call it. You want to find the resolution. So you sit down and you start watching at 4. And then as soon as they're done with that story, or even before, they'll open another loop. When they start the news, they say, a murderer was rampaging around. And also our top story tonight is about how people are getting swindled by this thing or that thing and how local politicians are in an uproar. They use all these really strong, scary words to hook you in, to draw you in.
Yeah.
And then they scare you and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? Am I going to get murdered? Is the political system going to crumble around me? And you stay. And then eventually, once they've scared you and they've gotten you to watch all of their advertisements, because that's what the news is, it's a way to get people to pay attention so that they can run ads and make their money. Then once you've watched their advertisements and they've made their money off of you, then they calm you, they soothe you. They go, and for our next story, after talking about the murdering rapist running around in your neighborhood, they talk about, oh, little Susie's starting a lemonade stand down the corner. and they close all the loops by giving you a nice, happy, little, soothing, comforting story. And you go, oh, okay, the world is still okay. Especially at night. They always close with, little fluffy things like sports, like, oh, today the sports team beat the other sports team and whatever. But it's all a pre-designed pattern. Like somebody set up that structure because it works. It has worked for 10,000 years and it will continue working for 10,000 years. And that's just an example of something that you might not want to know about. You might just be like, hey, I'm fine watching the news. I like to watch the news. Shut up. Leave me alone.
I like that.
Okay. So now those are 2 kind of like rip your mind open to a whole new reality.
Yeah.
Oh, I did have another question for you too, Dieter. Can you think of something that changed about your life after watching Fight Club? Did you do something differently that you didn't do before?
Yeah. After watching Fight Club, I think there's this thing you can't avoid. You see him. There's a certain scene where he's talking about the way they used to sit on the toilet with porn magazines. Now they're sitting on the toilet with IKEA catalogs, and they're going through his living room and all the Exer bike and the curtains and the string stripe patterns on his couch and whatever. And there's just this thing, like, especially that's why I especially love the first part of this movie so much, because it's such a cynical look at everybody's life that we know, basically. Like, I will see this guy doing that and sort of the desperation in his voice, and I would look around in my own living room and I would see that I was doing the exact same thing, just like really worrying about what kind of picture frames and I'm going to put on my wall when people come by. What message am I conveying about myself? With the pictures, with my travel pictures or something that I put on my wall. And there was definitely moments after that where I really tried to let go of that, because I realized it was a trap as well. Like, there's this whole thing where if you invest in something, you just want to get more out of it. The more you build your nest, the more time you want to spend in it and the more you want to show it to people, and that there's actually good in letting all of that go and just being okay with whatever happens in that regard, you know. So yeah, that's the biggest thing that I have to think of, that the effect that it had on me, and that made me do something different, and more than anything made me see what I was doing.
Cool. All right. So now we've sort of delved into those kind of darker, more gritty movies. Let's get into some fun and kind of happy ones.
Yeah, let's start smiling.
What's movie number 3?
Movie number 3 is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And that's just a movie that came to mind because I started thinking, you know, about the philosophical ones, but you need to have those movies where when you watch it, as soon as the credits roll, you just feel like packing a bag and going anywhere.
Beautiful.
Like going to mountains. So what is it about? Like, for those who haven't seen it, it's about a guy who basically has the most boring life. He manages negatives, like photo negatives, in the basement of Life magazine. And he daydreams a lot. So these daydreams, actually, they sort of show them like when he's thinking about impressing a girl that he likes, he's like flying through burning building and saving her puppy and things like that. You know, there's all these exaggerated scenes of his daydreams, but in his actual life, he doesn't do absolutely anything until one day a very important negative gets lost, and they come in to take over the magazine and make it an online thing. He decides to go after the photographer that's somewhere in the mountains of wherever to figure out where it is. And so that's how he like just runs out the door and starts going on this crazy adventure with sharks and longboards. And yeah, it's just very, very cool. A lot of it in Scandinavia, Afghanistan. And when I see that movie, especially the second part, I just, with the music that goes with it, I just really want to go longboard off of a volcano, you know. I just really want to get out there.
Cool. So it just kind of makes you excited about the opportunities that we have in life and just gives you motivation, gives you a boost to go out there and make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. He's like the typical guy that's just, you know, he has his laptop. He doesn't say much. He does. And that's something that I kind of identify with, especially my past self. And then all of a sudden he's just like, fuck this. This is my mission. This is my most important thing right now. And he just starts accepting whatever comes his way, you know. Like he starts making all these connections with people who don't even speak the same language, and you know, I think that's all there is to it. It just gives me this go for it feeling, you know.
Yeah, I get the same feeling from our next movie too. So what's movie number 4?
Movie number 4 is Office Space.
Amazing comic genius.
Yes, by Mike Judge.
Mike Judge.
Who made Beavis and Butthead.
Mm-hmm. King of the Hill. Idiocracy.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff.
So what is it about? You seem to remember better.
Oh, yeah. I did watch it a few weeks ago with my brother. It's about a guy, similar, actually, all of these stories have the same beginning. It's a guy who works in an office.
Yeah.
It's just the prototypical representation of going along with the nice, comfortable life plan, you know? It's...
Yeah. White collar cubicle.
You make plenty of money. You make enough to have a nice living, to get a nice little house, you know. So it starts off with a guy going to his job at some random tech office. You know, it's called Anatech, just a traditional kind of vague sounding name. And it's a little bit like a real life version of the cartoon Dilbert, because there's all these like stereotypical office things going on. You know, the phone's ringing and everybody has their little cubicle. And there's the receptionist taking calls all day, and like her same voice that she uses with every single person talking to her. And there's the stereotypical boss. One really weird thing that I've noticed in life is that the role of a boss is almost like if you interviewed 100 people and asked them, what is their boss like? They're all going to say the same thing. And these are 100 different unique people in the world. And they will get described by their employees as having the same personality. It's really weird. It must just be a social role that we step into when we become a boss. We start acting in a certain way, like a manager, you know?
Yeah.
It's really bizarre how universal this is. And everybody thinks that their boss is unique. And so a movie like this that's one of the things that's valuable about it, is it shows you like, hey, everybody is going through this. Everybody has this boss who comes in and it's like, listen, could you come in on Saturday? We actually, we really need to get this project wrapped up in the next few days. It's taking a little longer than we thought. It's really important,
Yeah.
And that's just what comes with the territory. Like, doesn't matter. Even if you work for the coolest company in the world, that still happens. And most of us don't work for the coolest company in the world. Most of us just work for a company.
Yeah.
And they give you just enough. That's the whole thing. I think that's a line somewhere in the movie. Like, they give you just enough to not quit. So anyways, the main character, he's just kind of going to work, doing his thing, and he's starting to get a little frustrated, and he starts talking to the people in his life, and there's just not much going on. He goes to his little apartment and he chills out after work. He cracks a beer, hangs out with his neighbor. He watches TV, goes to, typical restaurant, sees a waitress that he's attracted to, doesn't do anything. That's just like his whole life is just like just enough to not kill myself. And he ends up kind of snapping, I guess. And he starts to get really frustrated by the whole thing, but he doesn't know what to do. He goes to this hypnotist, and the hypnotist gets halfway through saying, "You're not going to have a care in the world. All your worries, troubles, and fears are going to float away until I snap my finger." And then the hypnotist dies before he has a chance to snap his finger. So the character is just left in this state of being carefree. And it gives you an example of what it would look like if suddenly you weren't afraid. You weren't worried. Like, if you genuinely weren't afraid of losing your job, would you still wake up at 7 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and go and, there's all these little things about the office. Like, something that I absolutely hate about offices. And this is like, I say that the last company I worked for was a really cool company. It was like my dream job, really. And I was the boss, like I was the manager. And I started to notice this thing, and it started to just eat away at me every single day. And that's this thing that we do as humans where we keep track of everyone else showing up on time.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
An office, here's another thing, just like the news, an office is designed for this. It's designed to leverage these little built-in mechanisms we have in our minds to keep each other accountable, because they want you to sit in the office for 8 hours every day. That's what it's for. That's why you build an office. It's not about productivity. If you want to read a book on how that's a sham, read the 4-Hour Workweek. The offices are not about being productive, because the most productive people typically work, erratically, or they work in a completely different way than everyone else is working. Like, most people who work in an office actually get very little done. They spend most of their day just kind of dicking around. They hang out, they chat with each other, they hang out in meetings, they, are on their Facebook, they're on their phone, they're checking their ESPN, whatever. And then for like an hour a day or 40 minutes a day, I think one study showed as an average, they actually get something done. They work for 40 hours a day, or 40 minutes a day, sorry.
That's a lot less than 8 hours.
It's crazy. But the point is not for you to be productive. The point is for you to be there for 8 hours. I don't know why, but that's just the way it's set up. That's the game. They just want you to be there. And that's how you show that you're a good employee. You show up on time. You follow the rules. And this is, at least in the United States, this is set up in school. School is not about having you learn. It's absolutely not. I mean, some schools might be, but public schools certainly are not. And I know because I went to one. It's about following the rules. It's about getting you to show up to class on time, to not break any of the rules, or else you'll get in trouble. It's getting you to comply. It's comply, comply, comply.
This sounds a lot like the military, I have to say.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about cleaning a toilet with a toothbrush. It's making sure you listen when we tell you clean a toilet with a toothbrush.
Exactly. And it's all these little things, you know, the bell, like in school, you have a bell that literally like rings and you're supposed to be like, oh shit, I'm late to getting into my little room. It's not about learning math. Like, there are better ways to learn math. There are better ways to learn everything. Like, I could have skipped all of school if somebody would have given me a stack of books, like the right kind of books. If they would have given me like 10 books, I would have gotten more out of school than I did for 12 years, you know?
Yeah.
And same with college. It's the same thing. It's not about learning. It's about turning in your reports on time. It's about training you to go work for a giant company, because that's what 80% of employment is these big companies. And that's fine. Like, if that's what you want, or you find your passion and bliss elsewhere, then fine. Yeah, sign up for that thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just for those of us that can't stomach the thought, like, then you can't do it. You know, it's never going to lead you to happiness. So Office Space just in a really hilarious way shows the frustration of that world. You know that you're smarter than your boss, but you still have to listen to him. Like, how frustrating is that?
Oh, I know what that feels like.
Yeah, and every human does. Anybody who works in an office, or even in for any sort of like company like that, you know the feeling of being like, my boss is clueless, but I still have to listen to what he says. How stupid is that?
Yeah.
Or someone being your superior just because they've been there longer, not because they're actually better at their job than you.
Yeah.
Like, that just grinds your gears. It frustrates you. It stresses you out. And that's just part of the game. So once he changes and he doesn't care anymore, a few funny things start to happen. One, he just can't be affected. You know, he just doesn't play by the rules anymore because he doesn't care. He's completely relaxed about everything. And they go, well, if you don't show up to work on time, then they're going to fire you. And he goes, okay, whatever. You know, like, imagine that. Imagine if you didn't care. If you're just like, oh, all right, that's no big deal. You know, I guess I'll go work somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And if you could handle life that way, then suddenly nothing can hurt you. You know, nothing, you know, you realize that it doesn't matter anyways. And so he starts to kind of test the boundaries, but not because he wants to test the boundaries, just because he wants to do what he feels like doing, you know?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to work in a cubicle anymore, so he unscrews his cubicle walls and just lets them fall down to the ground because he wants to look out the window.
I remember that scene, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And, you know, more hijinks ensue and really funny stuff. But basically it's about realizing that, you know, if you don't like something about your life and your circumstances, then you have the freedom to change it. Nobody is making you go to that job. Like, I know it feels like you have to do it, but nobody's making you live in the house that you live in or the apartment you live in. Nobody's making you do anything. And once you realize that, you have kind of total freedom.
Yeah, definitely. I like that story, especially because I kind of recognize it as well from, if your frame is stronger than those of your coworkers, you're gonna stick around. If you just stick with your story that, you know, just doing your 2 hours, as long as the results are there, as long as you're needed. Where I work on the boats as well. I remember one time a project engineer told me this. He told me about me and another colleague. He's like, you guys, 10 of your 12 hours, you're on the other computer, like on Facebook, and doing things that have nothing to do with work. But when we need to start, you guys are ready, you know? Which was kind of hilarious because I was like, I can, as long as I stand my ass out, as long as I can keep proving that what I do is valuable and no one gets slowed down by that, you know, I can do my relaxing thing. I don't have to sit here looking busy, you know? I don't have to sit here reading manuals or something just to look like a good, nice little surveyor, you know?
But the disgusting part is, if you did start reading more manuals and showing that you were working hard, quote unquote, they would probably think you were even better. They would reward that behavior. If you started like flipping through manuals every time the boss walked around, he'd be like, wow, Dieter's really stepping up his game.
Yeah, it's true.
That's the disgusting, horrible part of the system that we build for offices.
That's like with naps. Naps are a good example because naps are proven to improve productivity in the afternoon, you know, for your next 4 hours. But still, you just know if you're napping next to the guy who's like shoving a sandwich down his throat and keeps working at his computer, they're gonna think that guy is the good guy.
Exactly.
That's the committed guy. They're not, and just gonna think that you're sitting there slacking off and you don't care.
Right. And
whereas your productivity will be better.
Yeah. And most companies don't have, most managers especially, they're just trying to hold on to their little fiefdom, their little power, which I did too. I mean, that's the thing. It just happens to you. I started suddenly worrying about everybody else crowding in on my little bit of power I had in this tiny little company that nobody gave a shit about,
Yeah.
It's just what we do. We're monkeys,
Yeah.
So it's just the weirdest damn thing. So Office Space is really, really amazing for breaking out of that and realizing how hilarious it is that we do this stuff. I mean, that we are monkeys and we do this tribal crap that doesn't matter. And we go to our jobs that we think is really important, but ultimately it doesn't fucking matter.
It's not worth being miserable over.
It's certainly not worth being miserable over.
Having regrets at 60.
Right. All right. So that ties right in with Walter Mitty. It ties in with the matrix of realizing that, reality is malleable and not absolute. So what's the final movie on our list, Dieter?
Yeah, after 5 movies where the guys try to get out of their cubicle, there's one that's slightly different. It's called Mr. Nobody. And it's basically it's the future. And this is a very old man, and he's the last mortal man on Earth. And they're trying to decide whether or not to give him immortality. So this is through an interview where he has to talk about his life. But the interesting thing is that he sort of experiences time in a different way. He remembers, or he sees multiple histories to where he got to this point. It's a very interesting movie, and also kind of upbeat. It's nice. So he goes through his life, but a big component of the movie is the butterfly effect. So for those who don't know, probably most people do, but the butterfly effect is a concept from chaos theory where they say that very small changes in course can have very big effects in the long run. So to give an example, once in the movie, he has a history where he's on his moped at some point and he just arrives to a house and at a certain crucial moment, I don't know. And then another history where there's it's raining and there's a wet leaf that sort of lands in front of his moped and he slips on that and, he ends up in an entirely different place and whatever was supposed to happen doesn't happen. So actually the movie The Butterfly Effect as well is a good example of that. But the whole point is, because the interviewer is confused, he has vastly different histories, but he's like, so what actually happened, But what I like about these kind of movies that have the butterfly effect involved is that it really shows you that we're always making plans, we're always worried, we're always like, should I do this or that? And we think our plans and our ideas and what we do ourselves are the grand deciding factor in how what our future will look like. But there's just a ton of moments in life where if literally we arrive somewhere 2 minutes earlier and we get hit by that bus that otherwise we wouldn't have been hit by, it would drastically change the course of our lives. And it just shows us that we have less control than we do. And in those terms, it just means that we can let go more. We can not worry so much about the decisions that we make, because ultimately a lot of it is decided by really, really random crap.
You have a favorite book about that too, right? Like Influenced by Randomness or something?
Oh, yeah, I'm actually, no, I'm still reading it. It's called The Drunkard's Walk. It was an interesting thing. I only read the first part of it until now. Actually, it's funny. I picked it up recently again. But it starts out with this study. Who are those guys? Daniel Kahneman?
Yeah.
Kahneman, yeah. The guy who wrote the Slow and Fast, Thinking Fast and Slow. Mm-hmm. And the first story that they had was about airline pilots. They were saying that positive reinforcement works better than negative reinforcement. And these pilot trainers that were in that class said, no, that's not real. That's not true at all. Actually, they said that when they yelled at people, they tended to perform better. And when they praised them, they tended to perform worse. And then he was like, wait a minute, so that sort of sparked some research for these people. And what they found was that you're always sort of like, most of your performances is going to go steadily up with practice and everything, but most of the time it's going to be fairly linear and just like wavering around that line. And most of them will be pretty close. But every now and then, if you have an exceptionally bad performance, outliers generally tend to appear on their own. So what happens if you have an exceptionally bad one, usually the next one will be the average one again. So it will be better than the bad one you just had. So what happened was they would have a bad performance. The guy would yell at them, and afterwards it would appear that they improved performance again. But it wasn't because of the yelling. It was just because the previous experience was an outlier, and naturally, most likely, the next performance will be on the average line again, which will be better than the last one. Same thing with the high spikes. If you have an exceptionally good performance, most likely the next one will be an average one again for you, which will be less than the exceptionally good one. So then they may have an exceptionally good one. The pilot trainer praises them, and then it seems like their performance gets worse after them praising. But the praising and the complaining has nothing to do with the performances.
It's just perception.
Yeah, it's a perception, because we think like we rationalize everything to, well, I did this and I decided to do that. But a lot of it is just backwards rationalization, It's random stuff that happens, and then we attribute it to how useful we are, how special we are. It all goes back to trying to prove to the tribe that we're very useful,
Nice. All right. Well, that wraps up our 5. We've got Fight Club, number 1. Number 2, The Matrix. Number 3, Walter Mitty, or The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. That's actually also a short story that I think you can get for free on audible.com, or you can find for free. Weirdly, I've listened to the short story. I haven't watched the movie. Office Space by Mike Judge, and Mr. Nobody. So those 5 movies are going to give you some really cool thoughts, some paradigm shifts and all that stuff. And real quick, before we go, we've got a little list of bonus movies, too. Some other ones that didn't quite make the list of the top 5, but still cool ones to give you different mindsets, motivation, maybe fuck with your mind a little bit. So, let's get into those. So here's the bonus list. We'll just go through them rather quickly. Number 1 for me, The Bourne Identity. And first off, and that includes all the Bourne movies. I just think they're really badass. They're really awesome. But the other thing that I get out of them is the constant change of scenery is just really inspiring to me. Even though there's like crazy, depressing shit happening there. Not always depressing, but just crazy shit happening. I just see all the different landscapes, and I see, Jason Bourne speaking all these different languages, and it makes me want to go out there and travel a bit. I also have the same thing with the James Bond movies. He's the international man of mystery, so he's always traveling around and speaking different languages and hanging out in different cultures, and that always kind of gets me kind of excited to go out there and see more of the world. How about a couple on your side, Dieter?
One that I thought of was Dark City. It's basically about people in a city, and every now and then just people come in and change everybody's memories and rearrange the whole scenery. And there's one guy who starts to get sort of superpowers within that realm, starts to figure out what's happening, what's going on, what the secret is. But it's very cool because, it's just, what if you actually were just born or created 20 seconds ago and all your memories were implanted? Like, can you truly believe in yourself? Another cool one is Revolver. And that's basically like a sort of a Guy Ritchie-esque movie. I don't think it's by him, but it's with Jason Statham as well.
It is actually.
It is by him. Yeah? Oh, okay, cool. and Ray Liotta, and just the discovery of like this mobster that all these sort of powerful guys that he respects and fears are actually just controlled by their ego, and their ego is, they're actually very afraid, and that's why they want to be thought of as either special, or they want to be feared or respected. So it's a big one on ego. The 10th one is the butterfly effect. So yeah, it just goes kind of back. It was just on the same line as Mr. Nobody.
But darker.
Yeah, but darker, yeah. Then, I don't know, put Big Fish on this list. I don't know, just remember having a good feeling about that movie, about sort of his adventure and all these weird people and creatures that he meets.
Yeah, it was very whimsical.
Yeah, so I think that's just kind of a cool thing, just kind of going into the world as a big kid. Especially because Ewan McGregor has this vibe around him, he has this sort of... I think it was Louis C.K. who said he's not gay, but he would want to have sex with Ewan McGregor or something. So, just that whole atmosphere. And another one, last one on my list, was The Zero Theorem. It's with Christopher Waltz. It's sort of in a sort of a fantasy future landscape where as soon as he goes outside, he just gets attacked by this overstimulating world with too many ads. It's sort of a caricaturization of our world, And he gets the job to prove the theorem that all is for nothing. But he's obsessed with staying with his phone. Like, he doesn't do anything with his life because he's waiting for a phone call. And it's very, very cool because it's sort of, like that Pink Floyd song, Time, where that is basically about you keep waiting for the starting gun and then all of a sudden it's too late. Like, no one told you when to run. That's one for our 5 songs.
Yeah, we'll do another one on songs.
Yeah.
All right, and my last one would be the Mario Brothers movie. No, I'm kidding.
I was like, wow, you snapped me out of my flow there.
If you are too young to get the reference, the Mario Brothers movie is perhaps the worst movie ever made. It certainly makes a lot of lists. It was the first video game adaptation to a movie, and it was hugely hyped up because it was right in I think it was early 90s. It was like 93 or 94. Yeah. So Mario Brothers were just conquering the planet on the Nintendo. Nintendo was such a huge part of the culture.
Yeah, as a Sega guy, I resent that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, so it was the first video game movie ever, number one, which even if you resent Nintendo as a company, you should appreciate that somebody tried to make a movie about video games.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And they just knew that they were going to basically get every kid in the world to watch this movie. And they just royally fucked it up. It was horrible. But it is definitely worth watching if you go to rifftracks.com and watch the guys that did Mystery Science Theater 3000 or whatever.
Oh, nice.
They do like funny commentaries on movies, and their commentary makes it worth watching. But
yeah,
it was really weird. It had nothing to do with Mario. It was really, really weird.
And maybe it can teach you something as well, that if you're afraid about your big business idea, like someone became a millionaire making that shitty movie. So I don't know, maybe.
Actually, I think it failed.
Well,
yeah.
But still, someone had the balls to make that, and you're worrying about your iPhone app or something. So.
Yeah, it could be worse. You could have made the Mario Brothers movie. It was like the guy who starred as Mario. That was like the last movie he ever did. He was Bob Hoskins, who was in Roger Rabbit, and he was kind of getting more and more famous at that time, and he just that just bombed.
I actually just watched Roger Rabbit last week. Yeah.
That's an amazing movie.
Yeah, it's so cool.
So, anyways, the last movie I was going to say is called Into the Void. It's not as much about travel or anything, but it's just a really trippy movie that kind of gives you a weird, disassociated feeling with being human. So
yeah.
it's all filmed from the perspective of a person. So even the camera shots are from watching through his eyes and having all these to be honest, depressing, sad things happen to him. But and he dies. So you get to experience what it's like to die. But that's the thing, that happens early in the movie.
Okay.
And we said we were going to spoil these movies anyways, but
yeah.
It's probably the most scary thing I've ever seen. It's not like a horror movie. It's just an exploratory movie.
Yeah.
but you get to experience, what it's like to die. And then kind of like he like floats around and sees what's going on in all of his friends and family's lives, and sees, how much impact he had in certain areas and how much he didn't in others. And, it's a pretty dark movie, but
yeah,
if you're into, challenging your perspective, then it's a good one to throw on the list.
I like that, because with what you said, and a lot of people might be thinking like, how do most of these movies have anything to do with actually traveling or being a nomad or something? But like part of these movies have the carrot where it's like, you can have this life if only, you could, if you go for it. But there's also the thing to run away from, and there's a lot of these movies will help you question your assumptions, question your beliefs, question the things that are holding you back from doing this. And a lot of other ones will just show you the rosy, the greener other side,
Yeah, we like to explore both of those sides
at
Advntrr. So, all right, that wraps up this episode. We will talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Hey there, it's Brad here from Advntrr. If you like this episode and would like Dieter and myself to cover a topic we haven't yet, we would love to hear from you. You can find us on our blog at www.advntrr.com. That's Advntrr with no vowels, ADVNTRR.com. On Twitter at Advntrr Lifestyle. And on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Advntrr. Give us a like, a follow, tweet us, or email us and let us know your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions. We also have a free newsletter you can sign up for at advntrr.com, where we'll share some of our best stories, thoughts, tips, tricks, and tools to make your location-independent lifestyle even cooler. Go ahead and sign up, and we've got some cool bonuses waiting for you as soon as you do. Thank you so much for listening, and I am looking forward to seeing you on the next episode.